On today's episode of The Chat, we're going to try and navigate a very real and uncomfortable dimension of our society. The many possible correlations between the birth and evolution of feminism in the world as we now experience it. Not slogans, not emotions, not hashtags. Outcomes. Let's talk about what changed.
First wave feminists, thank you. You helped win the vote. But your movement was never built for all women. It was engineered by white elite women and bankrolled by people like George Francis Train, a bragging white supremacist who wanted political power kept in white hands. And your own leaders said it directly. Carrie Chapman Catt told Southern lawmakers that white supremacy will be strengthened, not weakened, by women's suffrage. So at its core, the first wave wasn't a fight for every woman's freedom. It was a strategy to secure the power of a select few. Second wave feminists, thank you. You promised liberation through sexual freedom, no-fault divorce, and total independence. But the structures you dismantled were the ones that families depended on. And as those foundations cracked, the consequences reshaped society. Children born outside of marriage surged from 5% to over 40%, and single mother households rose more than 400%, becoming the group most likely to experience poverty and leaving women to absorb nearly all of the fallout alone. Modern feminists, thank you. You promised progress, empowerment, and a world where women could thrive on their own terms. But the culture you built cast men as either dangerous or useless, and women as morally superior. A framework that upended the very design relationships depend on. You elevated independence over relationship, career over family, and treated motherhood as a limitation instead of a calling. And the result wasn't stronger women. It was women carrying life alone, reaching 35, now struggling to either find a husband or have children, or foregoing it altogether, praised for their resilience while deprived of the support that earlier generations could count on, and redefining women so broadly that anyone could claim it. The movement erased the very boundaries that once protected women at all. So yes, let's thank the feminists.
Two things can be true at the same time. On one hand, women absolutely needed legal emancipation. Voting rights, property rights, legal recognition, these were necessary corrections. But on the other hand, it is also hard to deny that the structural changes that followed recalibrated families and communities in measurable ways. Let's look at the data. In 1960, only about 5% of children were born outside of marriage in the United States. Today, roughly 40%. That's not opinion, that's U.S. National Center for Health Statistics data. In 1960, about 61% of black adults were married. Today, that number sits closer to 32%. Among black births, about 24% were outside marriage in 1965. Today, that number is roughly 70%. Now, is feminism solely responsible for that shift? Not seriously, and no serious analyst would say that. But can we pretend that no-fault divorce laws beginning in 1969, sexual liberation movements, and the normalization of independence over interdependence had no impact? That would be intellectually dishonest. Divorce rates in 1960 were about 2.2 per 1,000 people. By 1980, after most states adopted no-fault divorce, that number peaked at 5.2 per 1,000. Legal friction around family dissolution was reduced. That may have brought freedom, but it also brought fragility. Again, two things can be true.
Prior to the 1970s, we had 5% of mothers with school-age kids working outside the home. And for all of human history, even during the Industrial Revolution, 17, 18, 1900s, like you said, in the 40s and 50s, you could be a janitor and support a family and have 4 kids on one income. And something shifted in the 1970s, and it's never shifted back. So it can't be like how the stock market's doing. It can't really be like all these other independent economic factors that have shifted and changed and been so different over the course of the last 50 years. The one big thing that we changed is we pushed women into college and into the workforce. And by the 1980s, they were on par with men in workforce participation. So in the span of about 20 years, we almost doubled the labor force by pushing all the women in, and men's wages have never recovered. So now you are stuck in a two-income trap where even women who want to stay home and even dads who would love to have their wife home with their kids, it's really tough.
So why did women entering the workforce keep men's wages stable or keep them from going up along with the inflation?
So we have all these very educated women, and we have a lot of kind of fluffy jobs like office jobs, HR jobs, social media managers, and mostly women do a lot of the same things they used to do in the home. So they're nurses, they're early childhood educators, they're retail workers, they're cooks, they're housekeepers. They're doing a lot of the stuff they used to do, which the Marxist feminists called unpaid labor, right? This is the myth of women's unpaid labor. So instead of cleaning your own house, educating your own children, cooking meals for your family, maybe for your parents or grandparents who can't cook for themselves, all the things we used to do for our own family, clerical work, bookkeeping for your husband's business, things like that, we're doing those things for corporations. So that, and this was kind of by design. A lot of the book is about the fact that there were people who pushed feminism, and it wasn't because women were oppressed and they cared about the position of women necessarily. It's because the same people who pushed, the 19th Amendment and pushed progressivism and feminism were the same people who drafted the Federal Reserve legislation, came up with the income tax, came up with the compulsory education system. And especially on the Marxist side, they pushed feminism because they said if we can push mothers and women into the workforce and we double the workforce, workers of the world unite. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we have this huge workforce, and through the university systems, we can kind of propagandize the young women to be socialists and to be Marxists, because they kind of tend that way anyway. The way that women's brains work is very like communitarian.
Now we move to culture, to economics. In 1950, about 34% of women aged 25 to 54 were in the workforce. By 1990, that number jumped to 74%. In the span of about 20 years, we nearly doubled the effective labor force. Basic supply and demand economics suggests that when supply increases rapidly, wages stabilize. Let's look at men's real earnings. In 1973, the inflation-adjusted median male income was roughly $61,000 in today's dollars. In 2019, about $57,000. Nearly 5 decades, and real wages barely moved. At the same time, household survival shifted, because in 1960, about 70% of families relied on a single breadwinner. Today, roughly 64% of married households with children require 2 incomes. This is what some economists call the 2-income trap. And here's the kicker. Once 2 incomes become standard, markets adjust. Housing in 1970 cost about $23,000 median price. Today, over $430,000 median nationally. Yes, inflation exists, but housing has significantly outpaced wage growth. So the uncomfortable question becomes, did expanding workforce participation increase opportunity while simultaneously increasing corporate leverage over families? And let's not forget the fact that many leftist, liberal, woke rhetorics still preach for men to be providers in these completely imbalanced new realities. But let's talk about fertility. In 1960, the U.S. fertility rate was about 3.65 children per woman. Today, around 1.66, which is below the 2.1 replacement level. Average age of first birth in 1970, about 21 years old. Today, roughly 27 years old. And I tend to doubt this one, judging by the debacles of frozen eggs shenanigans and regretful social media videos by many women in their 30s and 40s. But anyway, more education, more career focus, more delay. Again, choice expanded, but biological windows did not change. And poverty statistics tell another part of the story. Married couple households experience about 5% poverty rates. Single mother households, about 28%. That doesn't mean single mothers are failures. It means structure matters. And when structure shifts rapidly, consequences follow.
Shout out to Maggie, the substitute teacher. In this section that we're going to go over, Miss Maggie starts cooking them.
Feminism benefits white people, white women the most. How do we actually bring everybody else up? Is there any people that disagree with feminism? Like, how do we bring everybody up?
I think we bring up our community by turning towards each other instead of against each other. And I think if you look at it as a balanced approach, I'm not going to deny the fact that women can work, we can vote, we can own, we can do all those things. But I think it is foolish to only look at that and not look at the harm that feminism has caused, especially minority communities. I'll speak as a Black woman. Black women get married at 1/4 the rate. And that is not helping our community because we're going against our men, and our communities are stronger because we are better together. So I think when we promote healthy families, when we promote the nuclear family, when we promote husbands and wives, moms and dads, boys and girls, that is how we get better. Feminism is not going to make us better. Feminism is actually making our community worse.
I didn't know that feminism equals like not getting married at a higher rate.
And the disingenuous. But that was our good sister Maggie, who talked about the adverse effect that feminism had on the black community, the black family, and the relations between black men and women. Oh, I didn't know that feminism had anything to do with the marriage rates. That's because y'all are not real feminists. The majority of white women, let's break that down. The majority of white women feminists on paper. They feminists when they want to talk crap, but when the chips have to fall where they may, they go to their men, and they go right back underneath that same patriarchy that they get out here and talk crazy about. That's why she don't know that there's a difference in the marriage rates, because their marriage rates may have dipped, but not because they don't listen to their men. Their marriage rates may have dipped for other reasons that might be exclusive to their community. And I'm not going to say feminism didn't take a bad toll on them at all, because you got white men on the internet also talking about how feminist white women are. But at the same time, they'll go and get married still and be like, you know what? I'm going to do what, you know what I'm saying, my husband say, and I'm going to be a trad wife. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that and all that. And they'll be talking all that smack to their husband. Black women are feminists at heart. That's the difference. They took that personally and ran with it. So all of that misandry that undergirds and supports the concepts of feminism, black women took that personally and they executed within the community and within the interaction between black men and women as it was designed.
What that older conservative woman raised was not emotional rhetoric, it was structural concern. Communities that historically relied on tight kinship bonds may experience greater destabilization when individual autonomy becomes the highest virtue. Marriage decline is measurable. Family fragmentation is measurable. Now the debate becomes, was the ideology incomplete in accounting for downstream effects? Or did the implementation ignore community-specific vulnerabilities? Or better yet, how about we find out whom are the people behind the movement and analyze their characters in order to better understand all this.
When reality smacks ideology in the face.
Can I ask one question? What would it take for you guys to no longer be feminism? To say, hey, we have everything we need. When does the movement stop? Because it seems like it never stops.
It's not going to stop because they now have already overturned Roe v. Wade. We've seen a right that we fought for and won taken back. So now we have to come back to the fight.
They overturned it to give it to the states, which means the people within those states can vote on how they want to do things.
Well, then it's not a right. If it can be stopped at an invisible line, then it's not a right anymore.
It was
and that's
never
why we're
supposed
here
to be
fighting
there
for
in
those
the
rights.
first place.
Neither was the women's right to vote or anything else. Like,
I personally, very controversial, I don't think women should vote, because we get women like this that say all of these crazy things.
You don't vote then, right?
No, I do vote.
Why? Lead by example.
I have to combat women like you, so I have to vote.
No, you're using your voice to tell me you don't want a voice, so go home.
Men are more logical, because you guys are always on the wrong side of issues. You don't even know why you're doing the things that you're doing. You just do things, and then you blame men.
She asked the dangerous question, when is enough enough? Movements without an end state often evolve into permanent expansion. Goal achieved, new frontier identified. And when she was challenged about voting, she revealed something strategic. If you believe something is harmful, you engage to counter it. That's not contradiction, that's political realism. And that mic drop at the end about constantly blaming men instead of accepting accountability of the negative results brought about by the movement was a satisfying touch.
Listen, black conservatives do not care what black Democrats and liberals think about us. I need you guys to understand this, especially my personal friends and family. I love you, but I do not care what you think. I have been speaking out against the Democrat Party for 5+ years, ever since you guys tried to force me to get an experimental drug that the government produced and put that in my body. And when I refused to do it, you called me the problem. You want to gatekeep the black community as if I'm not pro-black, all because you told me that Donald Trump is a racist. You want to know what racism is? Racism is supporting the killing of 400,000 black babies every single year just because the left calls it women's reproductive rights. You don't see the eugenics in that? You don't see that they are literally wiping us out and keeping our numbers down and telling you to support it? You don't think it's racist to tell black men that they should be women? To promote the idea of men in women's sports, men in women's locker rooms? You want me to let my little black daughter compete against some boys and potentially get physically harmed and stomp out her competitive nature because she can't physically beat them? And that is more pro-black somehow? You think it's more pro-black to allow millions and millions of migrants to come here and help themselves to our taxes while black and brown Americans literally struggle every day? That's more pro-black? The reason we don't care what you think is because we know you're not deeply thinking. And I say that with love, guys. I used to be the same way. I used to vote however the Democrat Party told me to vote. And then I started doing research and I realized that the Democrat policies do not help the black community long term. I would love to have a real conversation with black Democrats and liberals that's not based solely in emotion, that has some factual basis to it. You guys need to do more research. And once you do that, then maybe we can talk. But until you do that, we do not care what you think because we know you're not really thinking.
She raises deeply controversial points, but also reveals internal community debate, concern about party loyalty expectations, groupthink enforcement, abortion impact within minority communities, cultural messaging about gender, immigration economics, educational propaganda concerns. You may disagree with her framing, but the existence of this debate signals something bigger. Ideological uniformity is breaking. So what have we navigated to date? Legal emancipation that corrected injustice, divorce law reforms that increased autonomy, workforce expansion that doubled labor supply, wage stagnation that followed, housing inflation outpacing earnings, fertility collapse below replacement, marriage decline across demographics, increased economic strain on single-parent homes, educational gender imbalance. Women now make up 60% of college students. These are not conspiracy theories. These are numbers. Some see men pushing strollers as progress. Some see something more sinister. Inversion. Inversion from the liberals and wokesters, who we all know are the controllers of the fashion world. The deeper issue isn't whether fathers should nurture. Of course they should. The deeper issue is equilibrium. Societies are ecosystems. When one pillar expands rapidly, others must adjust, and balance should be retained, which is no longer the case in this day and age. Movements must be evaluated by long-term outcomes, not just initial victories. Subscribe, like, and share. This is The Chat. We out.